company, right? And every single component that they need to procure, they've got like a preferred or an established MRO company in their database. So what we need today is actually a single stakeholder who would be able to plan moving forward how the industry is going to be impacted. Because at the moment, it very much focuses on single individual companies, right? And the procurement process of each asset owner and operator are very much rely upon, for instance, oh, I want to outsource my maintenance of signaling system for the next 5 years, and they will do as such. And this will be rolling and rolling. But if the one single stakeholder who will be able to see on an overall scale what the industry would need, right? Both on the project side, construction phase, at the same time later operation side. And if we all embark all this predictive maintenance and whatnot, what will happen to all these people that we train, right? This actual body may be required very much less than what we intended to. So that probably is going on somewhere in the ministry or any policy level, but so far we have not seen yet. So we are using MARIC as this platform to brainstorm. This is also one of the agenda that we look at.
Because not just the requirement, we also take into account the attrition rate. You know, Middle East, the attrition rate, the number of workers that are moving there. So I think that it is a big issue actually, addressing. Okay, now we rest the manpower item. Can we have questions? Come. Let me. Okay. All right.
Assalamualaikum and very good morning to everyone. My name is Asfan Nizam. I'm from Vestec Sdn Bhd. We do mainly oil and gas equipment supply, and also we expand into an ICT business lately. My question is, how do we collaborate with, I'm very interested in Encik Hazwan's slide and presentation just now. So I would like to know further, and also question to Encik Syed on the smart manufacturing system. So I would like to know how are we going to collaborate with the guidance from MERIC as local industries to actually bring more our expertise from our company, or we try to work together along with MERIC that to develop local talents into a real business. One of the interesting factors that coming in my mind is the HSR project that is going to be a mass kind of prerequisition and preparations. That's my question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, sir. We share your pain in oil and gas coming to rail. Which one of you want to start to answer the question? Okay.
No, I just want to say, come to our meeting and we'll talk. No, I'm just joking. No, but anyway, I think the important part is, you're right. Like I said, why we had to identify the 3 industries, for example, CMC is working on, is to identify the key strategic, or rather the core competencies that we've got, right? And in oil and gas, for instance, we've been supplying exactly the same thing. In railway, as an example, we have done the communication system, right? So it's from the CCTV to the radio to the blah, 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 which is exactly what we did for MMHE for their vessels, or even some of the rigs for the asset owners. So it's exactly the same discipline. And I think the switching costs for contractors may be, like you said, quite large, or rather the barrier to entry as well. Especially in railway, you've got this very famous thing about you've got to complete 3 MRT before, you know, in Malaysia, which is definitely not going to happen. So these are the things that if we combined, we may be able to meet, right? No guarantee either, but we've got to try, right? So in your case, I'm sure, if not me, so many of our members would be interested to talk, right? Given the right strategy and the right spirit, then we can definitely see how we can collaborate.
Okay, on the smart manufacturing, I'm not particularly clear about what is it that you want to know, okay? But what I can tell you specifically, any local companies who embark into migrating from the traditional or conventional approach to upgrade into smart manufacturing, there's a facility incentives available in MIDA for that. So we can discuss on that, and particularly for the oil and gas sector, we have a specific division looking after the oil and gas services in MIDA. So definitely we can talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Any more questions? Sorry? Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning. Nazmi from TDA. First and foremost, I think thank you and congratulations to Might, Marik, and for having this dialogue session or forum session, very fruitful. There's 2 questions actually. Cuma saya dah terlupa yang second one. So I focus on number 1. Number 1 ni lebih to Cik Syed Maida. In accelerating the development of rail industry, of course, number 1, I think from my point of view, is to really attract foreign direct investment, especially from the OEM or the first-tier component supplier for rail industry. But at the same time, we must also make sure that the local are ready, the local in terms of capability, technical capability, capacity are ready. Now, some of the real local players that from my personal observation, some of them are very good in terms of human workforce capability or competency, but in terms of infrastructure, it's quite lacking in terms of the facility, equipment. What sort of incentive that MIDA provide for these companies, especially the small and medium, to some sort of modernize, enhance its equipment facilities to cater for a bigger operations or we call it manufacturing in terms of from MRO convert into manufacturing or production assembly. What sort of incentive that government, perhaps maybe through certain matching grant, existing matching grant that you can provide? Itu saja dulu kot. Kalau ada soalan lain nanti raise hand. Okay, thanks.
Okay, as I mentioned earlier on, we don't have specific incentives or facilities to cater for the rail industry. But we do have a matching grant to support the development of local companies to upgrade their machinery or to automate certain processes. Depending on the suitability or appropriateness of the application, the grant was allocated about 200 million a year, specifically to local companies. So on that note, I think as I mentioned earlier on, there's a lot of engagements need to be done between the local rail players and MIDA and MITI in particular, so that we can look in a holistic manner in terms of what are the gaps and what are the issues that need to be addressed at policy level or at the government level in order to support the local industry players. Thank you.
Maybe we can organize a more detailed program with MIDA. Anybody want to add on this or? Okay. Any more questions? Can you hold on? Can we have somebody else first, because you have used twice your ticket? I'm sorry. Sorry, we will come on back. Okay, please.
Hi, my name is Nicholas. I'm from the My HSR Corporation. I would like to understand more from the aviation and the aerospace industry, because we have geared up our local companies for the export market. I would like to know what interventions were actually put in place to get them ready in the past few years.
You're asking my opinion of what we have done
More,
for local aerospace company that export materials outside.
Yeah.
What have we done for that?
All the aviation industries.
Okay, I can answer you in a very technological sense. Okay, we have an organization called MAIA, which is Malaysian Aerospace Industry Association. So they will take care more of, let's say, any documentational work, paperwork for export control, or not export control, for talking to customs and whatnot like that. So we have an organized or an association for that. For AMIC, we take care on the technological side. So if we want to look at an exporter, let's say a random industry A or company A, for example, how to help them just means, how do we increase their business? Okay. How do we make them more globally competitive? Now, I'm assuming that things work similarly, whereby you have a tender that came out from an OEM or a project or something like that, and a whole bunch of companies will go after the tender, giving the best price or the best service or whatever like that. Same thing. AMIC as a national, as a Malaysian national front, an R&T front, we look to see how we can enable these companies to be more competitive. Now, whether it is by introducing them new technologies, helping them to improve or optimize certain processes. The third thing is something that we are starting to do a bit since last year, and we will be going full steam ahead this year, would be to digitally connect suppliers together. Okay, similarly from what I saw in the one of the presentations, you have different tier companies. I'm not too sure if this is the same in aviation company, whereby the tier 4s is connected to the tier 3s and 2s and then 1 and then to the OEMs. If it is the same, what we are doing at the moment is we're taking a look at how to connect these players digitally. Now, the first and foremost influence would be your procurement process. Okay, you no longer need to rely on, let's say, paperwork, and you are basically speeding up the whole entire procurement process. If you know that the OEM is asking for you to give a certain rate in terms of aviation, let's say I want to make, let's say for Airbus, we made 800 planes last year. Okay, with 800 planes comes to the tier 1s that they need to supply 800 sets of whatever. Okay, let's say wing components, for example. And that would mean that for the tier 2s, they need to supply, I don't know, times 4 or times 8, depending on what part you're talking about. So this entire thing is then connected to each other. Okay? By doing the digital procurement or digitalized procurement process, you actually bring on other aspects. So better quality control, for example. You can decrease your warehouse stock because everything is on order or, let's say, fit for purpose. So that has a very interesting ripple effect. And this is purely on procurement purposes. Now, if I do digitalization on other things, for example, manufacturing, okay, I get more data on a particular component. Let's say, for example, and I may be outside my own field here, if let's say for noise, if each individual rail track, each 1 meter segment, you have a sensor on it to track your vibration, okay? You then have a data on vibration, and you also have the data of the type of train that goes across this particular sector, and you know the kind of load that your train is having, peak time, or you have a lot of people, or maybe it's a school kids or whatever like that. This then corresponds to a particular noise level or whatever. All these can be seen rather academic, but it has a commercial value to it. Okay, so summing it all up, it is not an easy answer to answer, but you look at it from a technological point of view, whereby our mandate is to nurture and improve the aerospace companies. Okay, I'm sure for the rail you can have the exact same mandate as well, because you are fostering and nurturing your own Malaysian companies, okay, to make it more competitive against foreign companies trying to take Malaysian projects, for example. So with that in mind, what is it, and this is where the gap analysis comes in, or to see what is Malaysia lacking? Is it that our cost is too high? Is it based on material? Is it based on human factor that our cost per head is too high? And if so, why? Can we automate certain things so that we keep our overhead costs low, yada, yada, yada. So you need to do that study in order for an actual answer to come out on this.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Liu. I think you can pursue further if on the question with Marik committee members. I think if you can catch Mr. Hanif, that would be good. Yeah? Okay, we will go back to you, sir.
Yes.
Thank you for waiting.
Yeah, maybe another question, but for sure the last from me. When talking about Industry 4.0, so we are talking about data management, data curation, and data exchange between different platforms, between robotics, between Internet of Things, between and so. So I'm also interested to know if in Malaysia there is currently a push to set up data norms and standards with 5G coming soon and so. Is there any agency setting up this kind of norm and standards for the Industry 4.0? And this is not only about railway, but also about
Actually,
aerospace.
Thank you for your question. The person responsible actually is at the next building, MCMC. I don't know whether MCMC has a representative here. They are looking into all these things. If you talk about Industry 4.0 per se, I can safely assure you that MITI is spearheading the roadmap. Actually, we are working with Mike as well to draw up the roadmap for Industry 4.0. And I'm sure MCMC is taking steps to address this telecommunications element. I couldn't safely answer. I don't know whether the rest of you are able to answer that question, but
Do you have any input on this? Yeah, I don't really want to steal the spotlight here because it's a real event and not an aerospace event. Any comments from the panelists on this? If not, I jump in on this again. Sure. Okay. To answer that question in a brief and complicated manner, there's a PhD for a reason. Basically, as far as I know, and I do work closely with MITI and as well as MITE, so there is a paper coming out on Industry 4.0 in terms of the heading of Malaysia and where this needs to be. That will come out soon. In fact, Ambach is actually part of that for aerospace. So what on aerospace we are doing at the moment is certainly when we want to do digitalization and connectivity and things like that, you are relying on your 5G network, 4G network, or telco operators and whatnot like that. But certain data doesn't require to use mobile network, or at least not at the rate of 4G and 5G that you know of. Keep this clear for communication on the higher rate data points. There is another band called LoRa, for those of you who may be familiar, LoRa and Sigfox. This is actually here in Malaysia, and LoRa especially is working with MCMC, as well as Sigfox, which is a French company that has started in Malaysia with its own operator here, called Esperanti. So we are actually looking at Sigfox to, in terms of aviation, we're actually looking at Sigfox to deploy certain elements of this by the end of 2018 with the help of Ambach and its network, especially the supply chain, to test the robustness of this network. That's number one. When we're doing the test means that we will have already in mind what parameters to do, temperature, pressure, humidity control, yada, 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 or etc. Let's keep it different now, etc. So this data would then be transmitted, let's say, one data pack per 10 minutes. Okay, so I get almost real-time tracking of certain components. And for those of you in rail, you can maybe imagine what kind of influence this may take. So there is that. And the reason why I'm saying testing is because there is not yet any standard for this. And the vision that we are having at the moment in Ambach is talking to players like MDEC and MCMC to eventually create a hub somewhere to connect all these information together. So suddenly you start to have a national, in my view, a national aerospace data center, whereby all data is then collected through to ensure certain smoothness in terms of transferring of parts or certain coherency in the workings together. Okay, so that standard will come eventually. We're actually looking at cybersecurity, because this will be a big factor when you talk about connecting things together. We are looking at the government to have a platform for cybersecurity. Again, same players, MCMC, for example, to set up that framework and network for this. In fact, I would say this building has some components and history on that. You can ask Mike on how this plays out. But certainly the Malaysian government is important role to enable industrial-wide, not only aerospace, but also rail, to really get you to the 4.0 era, okay? There's only so much you can do, whether it's collaboration or a single company, to do automation or do digitalization. You will eventually need to rely on national network, whether it's telco, new networks such as LoRa or Sigfox, or even low-power Bluetooth devices, which again can be done on a network-wide thing. For example, Marek can do a network-wide thing just for rail, just as what Ambach is looking at this moment in time, just to test the robustness of Industry 4.0 connectivity, just to test an in-house network first, just to get the answers out. Because similarly with all of you in this room, you've heard of Industry 4.0, you've heard of connectivity, no one has done it yet, okay? You don't know the kind of data that is sensitive, or the data that is not sensitive, or the data that's sensitive but can help you in return. Okay? The natural way is to say, these are my data, I'm going to keep it, I don't want anybody else to know about this. It's a natural instinct. But data needs to be shared. If you're following the news with Facebook, there you go. Okay? Whether or not we like it, data is already out there. Okay, whether it's by your employees or by the company itself. The question now is, how do you control your data? And in order to know how to control your data, you need a test bed to do that.
Okay.
And for aerospace, that would be our 2018 year for this.
Oh, okay.
I didn't want to answer actually because I shouldn't be answering on behalf of the asset owners or operators, right? But generally, as an industry observer, you're quite right. Because we have always been providing infrastructure to the operators. So we do see the emphasis on providing the infrastructure that is future-proof to a certain extent to ensure that the platform in terms of data gathering are robust enough to cater for any data messaging or big data analytics application in the future. But as Doc has rightfully mentioned, until today, there is no such a standardization that has been made in Malaysia particularly. Not just in railway particularly, what we have been emphasis on is the fact that there will be TODs and whatnot. So the infrastructure of the data, and as I mentioned earlier, the last mile connectivity from a certain LRT station right to the end of your door, right? And all this requires data gathering. And individually, again, all the different operators and asset owners have got them from either their ticketing data from the automated fare collection, from their signaling data in terms of train scheduling, from, you know, probably some data gathering from their CCTV at platforms in the stations and whatnot. They've got all this data, but whether it's robust enough and normalized under one single community platform, to be honest, I doubt it. But even if there is, the other part is how to utilize and use it for the benefit of cost savings or all the other key big data objectives that I've mentioned earlier. Yeah, so that's from a real perspective today.
Thank you, Mr. Azwan. Okay, one final question before we settle the program. We can have future programs. You guys, you know, you might have questions. We will set it up in a different way. I think Malaysians, we are shy to ask questions. You don't want to introduce yourself, we can set up. Okay, there is a question. Last question, yeah?
Okay, can I ask a question later on as well?
Sorry?
Can I ask a question later on as well?
Good afternoon, all the panelists. Thank you very much for your sharing. My name is Kenny from PwC Consulting Malaysia. I got a question for Prof. Kamal. Back to the question in terms of human capital development, right? So apart from your university perspective in terms of work-based learning, what are the other initiatives your university have in order to keep up to the speed with the development of industry? Like, as we know, the industry transformation and also apply of new methodologies and ways of working are really quickly. But when you go back to academic side of things, let's say changing syllabus can take some time. So I would like to understand what are the universities are doing so you're keeping up with the development of the industry. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Yes, in terms of academic, yeah, we are preparing for the human capital requirement as quickly as possible. And from the research point of view, among the universities now, we are very actively. It's kind of, we were a bit cool, but now all the universities now are getting eager to involve with rail in many aspects, and not just engineering, in computing, and in human resource, in management, and so on and so forth. In fact, I have with me my PhD student here, Danish. Can you stand up, Danish? Okay. He's my PhD student on nano particle, actually for the heat dissipation in motor. Okay. Particularly, he's working with the ERL. So this is just one example. And in other universities as well, in my own universities also, there are people working for example, geotechnical issues. For example, in Johor, it's peat soil mainly, soft soil. So it's challenging actually for high-speed rail in particular to have this straight and level kind of alignment. So the world has to go through soft soil. So this is again some of the example where universities can get involved with the industry. Okay, and there are many aspects actually. I think we can have another forum on this. But the thing is, I want to share with you is that the universities now are also, quite actively introducing themselves. Oh, I'm also with rail. I'm also with rail. So it's good to have this kind of environment. So another point, do we have a final round of after this? No.
Guys, let the audience decide. You want to have a final round from them? Yes. No? Yes?
All right. Okay.
Yes?
What's the final round?
Okay, yes.
Okay, in that case, can I reserve that for now? Okay.
You want to have a final 2 minutes each?
Sounds like a fight.
Final 2 minutes each. We will have we might have a future forum with regards to specific to human capital development and all. But let us have 2 minutes each to wrap up the session one by one.
Okay. Thank you. I think it's very interesting that we have this session today. And from MIDA perspective, we always look at ecosystem development. Just now we heard question about human resource, human development, capital development, financial assistance. So I think it's high time probably, Mary, to look into this. And then for human capital development, there's a need for academic institutions, for the industry players and policymakers to sit together to look at the overall requirement in the system. Because we don't want, end of the day, we produce graduates which are no longer relevant to the industry. So we have seen before when we produce so many pilots and there's no more job opportunity for pilots. But today we see there's requirement more than 35,000 requirement for new pilots going forward. So this also need to be planned up front, especially for the rail industry. We are still new. I think high time now we sit down together and look into this and address this issue as at holistic manner into ecosystem development. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I agree with Tuan Syed on this very, very much. I would like to say that you from the industry and we are from the academic, we need to work together because rail is imperative. Tak boleh tidak. We have to. It's no more looking backwards. If you look at Japan, for example, rail is part of their life, way of life. It's their culture. Because urbanization, modernization, it has to come hand in hand with urban transport, in particular railway. So I don't believe that railway will go down again. We were stagnant before, okay? Before the 1990s, railway industry in Malaysia was stagnant, if not to say, we look at railway, okay, bad attitude, so bad impression. But the 90s and beyond, it becomes better and improve. So it is going to go up. So my feeling and my advice is that for the industry, rail is no more turning back. Whatever outcome of the PRU, okay, rail is here to stay and will advance. So in this case, the academic, the research, the industries, and everyone, like Tuan Syed said, we have to come up and move forward. Thank you very much.
You really want the Cinderella to come alive.
Okay, so I just want to echo a bit on what Prof said. I completely agree. I think if you look at the Ambach model, it is exactly that. You have industrial players, you have universities or academics working very closely with the government to advance a portion of the industry here in Malaysia. And I think the step by having Marek around and having a forum such as this is a very big step forward. You may not see it at this moment, but a year from now, 2 years from now, you will see the kind of foundation that this particular session has built. For me, coming as a researcher, the development and the technology cannot lag behind. There's a lot of things that could be learned from the aerospace industry, how it nurtures the ecosystem, how it tackles certain problems, how it enables it to grab other things other than the traditional aerospace approach. So all these kind of things, I implore that the rail industry takes a look at, whether it is to form an R&D center or whatever like that, form something that's customizable, that is fit for the rail industry here in Malaysia. And in order for you to do that, you need to band together, and Marek is a good banding together of that, and to talk to each other, what really are the problems, where do you see the gap, and what you can do constructively together to tackle this to be globally competitive. Okay, whether it is in certain technologies that you have highlighted or even other things, like for example interiors, it's something that Malaysia never looked at in the beginning, but because of the players that we have in Malaysia, interiors just came up like that in an off-chat conversation somewhere, and we began to start that ball rolling. So that became something useful, and so this is where I think the community needs to come together, as I said again, talk, do a gap analysis, and then you can move forward from there in a speedy way.
No, it's exactly what Doc just said, to be honest. But I think the idea of Marek, which the theme that I'm representing today, is the fact that, yeah, we need to work together. And firstly, to believe in ourselves, right? We definitely are not able to convince our stakeholders if we ourselves can't work together and importantly, believe in ourselves. So, especially now is about the future. And we are the ones who still be here for the next God knows how many years, inshallah. So we can't run away, right? We are the local players. It is our domestic market, our home. So the onus is on us to take the opportunity, work together, and can even, like I said, influence the policy making for this strategic industry like railway.
Okay, we have reached the end of the session. Thank you very much to our learned panel. And thank you to the audience, for contributing in a way to the forum. So hopefully we'll meet again, and I leave it to our MC. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before we wrap up the session, I would like to ask the panelists to remain on stage with our moderator for, we would like to invite Encik Nasir to hand over souvenir token of appreciation to our panelists, and also for some photo opportunities. Okay, we begin with Tuan Syed from MIDA. Prof. Khalid from UTHM. Dr. Liu from Ambach, our aerospace guy. And last, but not the least, Mr. Hazwan from CMC. Once again, it is with great hope. Thank you very much, Encik Nasir and also our panel. Okay, once again, it is with great hope that our talk today gives us a clearer picture on the various situations and opportunities for rail industry. So there is a lot of work that needs to be done, and you can catch them after this. But before we end, I would like to once again remind you to actually participate in our e-survey. Scan the code, QR code, which is also available on the brochure. And before you leave, maybe you can drop by at the Technomart, which is happening now, on the other side of the building, same floor. So with that, thank you very much and hope to see you again. Thank you.
dulu.